Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Auburn Leak That Built the SEC Dynasty. In the spring of 1991, a closed-door meeting in Birmingham leaks. Auburn administrators, West Virginia representatives, Virginia Tech power brokers, and a rumor, just a rumor, that Nebraska listened. The SEC panics. The Big Eight tightens ranks. Florida State pauses its ACC vote, and within 18 months, the SEC invents the championship game and launches the modern dynasty. This is alternate history, but it's rooted in real instability, real incentives, and a moment where the future of college football was less certain than we remember. Because what if the SEC didn't rise out of inevitability? What if it rose out of fear? Let's set the table for 1991 and the lack of stability. We look back at the early 90s like everything was inevitable. SEC expansion, championship game launches, Florida State joins the ACC, Big Eight stays intact at least for a few more years, but in 1991, the Bowl Coalition is forming, split national titles are frustrating everyone, TV contracts are fragmented, and conferences are experimenting. The power structure is unsettled, and Auburn feels boxed in. And that sets the table for Auburn's incentive. Auburn's not trying to leave the SEC. They're trying to protect their future. Alabama holds enormous in-state influence. Florida is rising nationally. Tennessee is ascendant. Auburn leadership worries. If the SEC expands wrong, they get structurally squeezed. They want revenue parity, a championship mechanism, scheduling leverage, and national title pathway clarity. And when they don't get immediate answers, they explore leverage. And while this is alternate history, it's grounded in real Auburn political instincts. And that sets the table for the corridor concept. This is an exploratory idea. A football first block stretching from Alabama to Appalachia that also includes West Virginia and Virginia Tech. West Virginia is looking for stability. Virginia Tech wants power conference footing. The sell isn't rebellion, it's bull leverage. And if you could align Auburn, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, possibly Florida State, possibly Miami, you control major bowl inventory. That changes bowl coalition negotiations. Now you might be thinking to yourself that Auburn would never risk angering the SEC like this, and that's fair. But they don't have to leave to create pressure. They just have to make it believable that they might. In conference politics, perception moves faster than contracts. And then let's enter the next stage of Nebraska, the leak that escalates everything. Nebraska in 1991 is a national brand, has Big Eight stability, but geographically isolated, and there's no guaranteed number one versus number two mechanism yet. They don't defect or even think about it, but they listen, and the rumor of them listening is just enough. That's when the leak matters, because if Nebraska even entertains alignment conversations, the Big Eight senses vulnerability. Colorado asks questions. So does Oklahoma. Texas, sitting in a wobbling Southwest Conference, accelerates merger thinking. The power map starts to change. And you might be thinking to yourself that Nebraska has zero reason to rock the boat. And you're right, they wouldn't leave lightly. But they did have incentive to secure championship access. The Bowl Coalition was new. Control wasn't centralized. Everyone wanted leverage. Nebraska listening is not betrayal, it's strategic positioning. And that sets the table for Florida State and the hinge vote. Historically, Florida State joins the ACC in 1991, but in this alternate history, they delay. They don't commit to the Auburn plan, they don't reject the ACC, but they leverage both. They demand stronger football revenue guarantees, bowl positioning clarity, and institutional control assurances. The ACC responds aggressively to secure them. The corridor idea never formalizes, but its shadow reshapes negotiations. And you might be thinking to yourself that Florida State would never risk institutional alignment for a football experiment. Correct, they wouldn't, which is why they only use it as leverage. And that leverage forces acceleration. And that sets the table for the SEC realizing what's happening. The SEC sees the smoke. If Auburn feels uneasy, If Nebraska rumors are circulating, if Florida State hesitates, then the SEC must move first. And this is where the universe pivots. The SEC doesn't get destabilized, it evolves faster. And that sets a table for the defensive innovation. Just like in our universe, in this alternate universe, the SEC expands with Arkansas and South Carolina, adds divisional structure, and most critically, the SEC championship game. However, in this case, this wasn't just innovation. This was with a sped up timeline that was done more in the name of strategic insulation. With the championship game, in addition to creating a de facto playoff and securing television leverage, this ensures Auburn stays locked in and also further raises revenue for all members and establishes brand separation. This might be alternate history, but a lot of the same logic applies in this parallel universe. And you might be thinking to yourself that SEC was going to invent the championship game anyways, like they did in real life. Maybe, most likely, but without pressure, without fear of losing leverage, without corridor rumors, innovation could stall. Sometimes dominance is born from insecurity, and that sets the table for the Notre Dame shadow. Notre Dame never joins anything, but they schedule aggressively. They publicly support clearer title pathways. They advocate stronger bowl alignment. They indirectly legitimize the idea that conferences must consolidate power. Notre Dame doesn't join the corridor, they pressure the system from the outside, and that pressure ultimately benefits the SEC. And you might be thinking to yourself, this sounds like way too many moving parts. But that's exactly what 1991 was. Unsettled, fluid, negotiated in hallways, not press conferences. The modern SEC dominance wasn't guaranteed. In this alternate history, it was forged in competitive paranoia. And that sets the table for the ultimate outcome. Now, a lot of the same things, you know, do happen in the long term, but by 1995, the SEC title game is a TV monster. Florida wins national titles, Tennessee peaks, Auburn benefits from structural security, the Big Eight merges into the Big 12 anyways, the ACC locks down Florida State, the Big East begins slow erosion. A lot of things that happen in real life, but with the posturing of the corridor happens at a much faster timetable than in real life. And while the corridor never forms, the specter of it catalyzes evolution. The SEC doesn't just survive the leak. They use the leak to make themselves even stronger, and that's the real twist. Now, we remember the 1990s as destiny, but what if dominance wasn't destiny? What if it was defensive? What if this hypothetical Auburn leak, real or rumored, forced the SEC to become the SEC we know today? That's why alternate history matters, not because it happened, but because it almost makes different outcomes possible. Now, if you enjoyed this deep dive alternate history, hypothetical near misses that could have changed everything, make sure you like the video. Comment below. Do you think Auburn was ever serious in this alternate history, or would this be a leverage only play? And subscribe for more chaotic but grounded college football universes. And check out the other videos on the channel where we explore other what if moments that could have entirely reshaped the sport. Because sometimes the dynasty is not built on certainty, it's built on pressure. And I'll see you in the next timeline.